Welcome back, our fellow patriots, to the Save Our Republic Daily video series. We're going to take another detour from the Constitution, but not really, because we're going to focus today on James Madison. This is James Madison's birthday, 1751, March 16th. And we're going to do some highlights about James Madison. He was known as the father of the Constitution, so we're not really taking too much of a detour, but we're not going to talk too much about the specific text of it. And I know that there are plenty of critics, and you can go to any channel you want. This is, all kinds of people that criticize the Founding Fathers. Go to one of those channels and watch that. This channel, we're going to talk about, at least for today, the successes that James Madison had in connection with America and the world. He literally changed the world for freedom and liberty, and so we owe him something. And on his birthday, we can acknowledge that. So, Madison was born in 1751. Now, 1776 is when the Revolution happened, so he was quite a young person, and he didn't really come to the forefront of American history until just before the Constitutional Convention. He became a politician, was well known in Virginia, became close to George Washington. He and Alexander Hamilton and other founders realized that after the American Revolution was won and we had the states operating under the Articles of Confederation, that was a recipe for disaster. And we had a number of states in America's Survival Guide. I call it the crisis. They were states amok. They were violating the unalienable rights of their citizens. They were engaging in trade wars. They were conducting their own foreign policy. It was a mess. And Madison had that insight and realized that we needed to have a new constitution. And he was able to convince, after many long nights and long days of vigorous persuasion, to have the Founding Fathers convene a constitutional convention. And one thing that he doesn't really get much credit for, but is really instrumental, is not only did he teamed up with Hamilton to have this happen, help create the Constitutional Convention, but he personally went to George Washington and said, "You must preside over this convention." And Washington said, "No, I really can't, because it's in Philadelphia in May and in the summer, and I already turned down a speaking engagement I was invited to go to, this really important national meeting for an organization, and I can't go. It would be embarrassing." And Madison said, "Mr. Washington, you need to go," or General Washington probably, "you need to go. It is your duty. For the sake of the Republic, you must attend." And Madison was very persuasive and convinced Washington to go to the Constitutional Convention and preside over it. That's important, because if Washington didn't show up, there's a fair chance the convention would have fallen apart, or its work would not have been ratified by the states. While Washington was presiding over the Constitutional Convention, Madison was doing the hard work. He was behind the scenes negotiating what the framework of the Constitution would look like, what our government would look like, and he drafted kind of the first draft of what our Constitution should look like. And we still have kind of the basic skeleton that he outlined. We don't have every exact provision that he suggested, but he is rightfully called the father of the Constitution, because he was able to cobble together a majority through compromise and an open-ended discussion and debate, the document that we have had in effect for over 240 years, with amendments, of course. And then he was instrumental in having the Constitution ratified by authoring many of the Federalist Papers. That, again, was a joint effort with Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay threw in some essays as well. Hamilton's are brilliant. Madison's are absolutely superb, probably the best exposition of government by an American hand ever. And so his contributions there, he didn't write as many essays as Hamilton, but what he did write about still evokes strong affection today and has a monumental influence today. Then he went to be a congressman in the first Congress. You might have think he would have been a senator, but Patrick Henry from Virginia hated the guy, and so he would not allow the Virginia legislature to vote him as a senator, so Madison was able to become a representative, and then he drafted what became the Bill of Rights. And he also helped create and get through legislation the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which was the first real protection in modern age of the separation of the disestablishment of the church from the state and the protection of the free exercise of religion. Fundamental precepts we just kind of take for granted today. We don't have religious wars. We don't try to impose our views of God on other people. We don't have a state-ordained church that tells us how to worship. We don't have taxes that pick our pocket, as Jefferson would write, to fund proselytization of a religion we don't agree with. That's all because of Madison. He gave a remarkable speech called the Memorial Remonstrance Against Religious Assessments, which still today informs what the First Amendment is all about in connection with the free exercise of religion and the separation of church and state. He also became our fourth president. He won the War of 1812. I'm not going to say that he was a monumental strategic genius in connection with the military, but in the end, we did win that war, and you have to give credit where credit is due. So he has had a fundamental effect on the course of America and the world by helping draft and ratify the Constitution, helping draft and ratify the Bill of Rights, and his contributions as president. So happy birthday, James Madison. Until next time, don't forget about America's Survival Guide at americasurvivalguide.com, Patriot Week at patriotweek.org, and the Patriot Lessons American History and Civics podcast, which can be found on Google Play, Apple Podcast, and all major podcast platforms. God bless you, God bless America, and God bless James Madison.